Alright, so this video is going to be covering making your own personal combat bar, and if you'd like you can copy exactly the way I do it. I'm going to go over how it's done, why I do it a specific way. Also, things that we're going to cover are important features like being able to quickly switch combat bars based on the weapon that you have equipped, how it works, why I do it the way I do I'll cover. No, I originally intended to do this video ages ago, but I am very late. But anyways, we are going to switch into an account that I have that does not have this set up, and we're going to build it straight up from there. Alright, so this is my plain Jane account. By default, your combat bar should look more or less like this. The weapons I'm going to be using to demonstrate, the quick switching will be just level 1 Wizard Wand and Wizard Book, along with a Bronze 2H, just to demonstrate that you can switch between different combat styles. First things first, as you see here, we only have access to 2 combat bars, so the first thing we need to do is enable the other 4. So gameplay, action bar, and display additional action bars is going to be where you find that option, and highly recommend that you just enable all of them. 2, 3, 4, and 5. So make sure that your additional action bar looks like this. 2, 3, 4, 5. And that will allow the other action bars to appear on your screen. Yeah, it looks about right. So, benefits of having these action bars up is it allows you to customize what abilities you see on screen and have quick access to them based on keybinds that you set beforehand. Now, I'll show you how to do the keybinds. Just understand that the order in which keybinds are set are going to be different for everybody. The most important thing is that you have this available and access to the abilities on the combat bars, and it's going to be different from person to person. So the way I like to set this up is 1 like this. So we have 1, 2, 3, and if you can't move them around, the way that you do that is by hitting this lock icon here. You can also keybind this. I normally have it set to a Shift L, and it will allow you to move the panels around on screen. Also, when you have it unlocked, you can stretch them out like that. So that's 5, that one's gonna go right there. And, there we go. So that's pretty much how I have mines. Actually, I think mine is more like this. There we go. Okay, cool. So that's the first step. This will allow you to mount a bunch of abilities on screen, and you'll be able to see the cooldowns on them. It's just a lot easier. Highly recommend that you do this right away. Regardless if you're new or old, just do this. Another thing we're going to cover real quick. If you see, like if my backpack here, or if I do that worn equipment, you get this little label above each tab. That's useless. You do not need to have that activated. You can disable this. We're going to do that now. It just takes up screen room, which is valuable. So we're going to go back to settings. So you go to interface, appearance, and activate slim headers, and it'll disable the labeling for each of the tabs. You don't need it. You know what your inventory looks like, and you know what equipment slot looks like. You don't need it. Alright, so the next part here that we're going to cover is action bar binding. I'll explain to you what I have set up, why I do it the way I do. So essentially what action bar binding does is allow you to switch the abilities that you have on screen that are usable based on the weapon that you have equipped. Now there are 2 ways to equip a weapon. You can set it on your bar if you'd like. Some people do, some people don't. Or you can do it through your inventory and just click stuff. Not efficient. I prefer to keep it on the main action bar. This is going to be a static action bar, one that doesn't change much. But what it does allow you to do is quickly switch into weapons. Let's see here. Oh, hold on. So I have magic, and then now switch into my 2-hand. Now I have melee. How do you set that up? So the way you do that, go to interfaces, action bar, combat and action bar binding, and this is where you're going to do all that. Now each section will have what weapon style you want that bar associated with, the action bar that you want it to appear on, and the action bar preset, which is the abilities that you set beforehand. Since this is just a proof of concept, what I recommend you do for the other action bars that you aren't using is just make sure they each say none action bar. I guess the bottom one doesn't really matter, but just make sure that none of these extra action bars are associated with any kind of combat style, because I think by default some of them are. So just make sure you switch it to none. And the two that we're going to be using is action bar setup 1 and 2. So we have a two-handed melee. However, you can be very specific on which melees, what type of melee, or what type of range, or what type of magic, so on and so forth, you want it to be addressed to. So I have a two-hander. That's not a two-hander, that's a dagger, but we do have a two-hander, so I'm going to set the two-hand melee. We're going to have it appear here, which is action bar 1. And then the preset, which is something that you do beforehand. So if you go here, click any of the action bars that you're not going to be using. So this is going to be one that you're going to make your own preset on. So I chose 7 for melee, and it just has this random bullshit assortment of abilities. It's just for demonstration. And then 6 is going to be the main one. Again, it's just for demonstration. But that's just so we know that it is actually switching back and forth between combat bars. So cool, you've made your combat bar specific for melee, magic, or whatever combat style you're using. Now it's time to bind them together. So every time I equip a two-handed melee, the additional action bar 1, which is this one right here, will switch into preset 7, which is my melee combat, which you see here, and it says 7 right here. Same with the magic, since we're using dual wield magic. The additional combat bar will change, which is this one again, and it will display action bar 6, which is right here. So let's just switch that back. So 1, 2, 3. Cool. Now I'm going to just reiterate that everybody uses combat bars differently. I think this is just the most efficient way of doing it, because you don't have to look off target. You know, if you're fighting a boss, you don't have to look off target to look into your inventory, which is right here, and click weapons or pieces of armor or jewelry that you want to activate. Because if you're looking in your inventory, you're not looking at the boss that's about to kill you. So that's pretty much how I have it set. So I put my weapons here, and when I hit 1, 2, magic appears down here. Now if I hit 3, which is my two-hander, melee appears down here. And of course you can't use any of these abilities, but you can, if you right click and customize keybind, this will allow you to keybind each of these squares individually. And I'm going to let you guys figure out how you want that set up, because everybody plays different. But that is how you do that. Alright, so next thing that we are going to cover, and I feel like this is probably one of the more important things, especially if you are a new player, is how do you designate XP, or experience, into specific skills while doing combat. Now, before, back in the olden good days of RuneScape, there was a panel right on screen that you could just click it and it would direct XP into like defense, attack, or strength. But that has changed, and I feel like they made it... I really don't like how it's done, because if you are a new player, you don't know that this is a thing. But essentially, if you go into settings, and I realize my cam is actually blocking that, so let me move that over here. Alright, so you go into settings, combat action bar, combat XP, you have this long, stupid list that I think is super unnecessary and should be changed. But essentially, how this works, if you are training melee, and you have these three things ticked, XP will be divided evenly into attack, strength, and defense. But if I just want to focus on, let's say, defense, I would have to disable those two, and all XP I get during combat, melee combat, will go straight to defense. I don't like how this is done, specifically because if you are a new player, you don't know that that's there. When I was trying to get a new player to join RuneScape, and this was like right before all this changed, I had no clue that this was a thing. All my skills are 99, so I don't really need to worry about this anymore. But I didn't know this was a thing, and we spent the first like 30 minutes trying to figure out why he couldn't get XP in a specific skill while training a specific combat style, and he thought it was stupid and never ended up playing again. So that is where this is at. And just keep in mind that when you're training skills and you're like, why aren't I getting defense or attack or strength or range or whatever, when you're training, you need to go into this and tick one or two of these abilities off so you can get that XP. Jagex, you also need to change this because this is stupid, this is clunky, and it's not intuitive. Alright, so we figured out how to bring multiple combat bars on screen. We've binded multiple action bars based on weapons that we have equipped. Now I'm just going to go into a little bit of an explanation of why I have things set up the way they are. Now, I feel like one of the most important features of having these action bars on screen is the ability just to access things when needed at a moment's notice without having to really look off screen. Excuse me, it's hot in my room. Now, a lot of people don't like putting weapons and armor or whatever on combat bars, but I highly recommend you do this. So you're looking through your inventory in the middle of a boss fight, and you find what you're equipping, right? So my two-hander, and I'm looking back at the boss. All of a sudden, instant kill mechanic comes, and I'm not ready for it. So it's just more efficient to have weapons and stuff like that you're going to use during combat on bar, so you don't have to really look away from the boss, and it's just potentially you'll avoid just instantly dying just because you're not aware of what's going on. Now, the combat bar under that, this is the combat bar that I recommend that you have your main rotations on. So, for example, if I switch to my staff, oh, that's not my staff. If I switch to my staff, I'll have a setup for two-handed magic. If I switch to my wand and orb, I'll have a setup for my wand and orb. If I switch to necromancy, I'll have a complete setup for necromancy. I'm fairly certain that this looks really complex to you, but there is a method to the madness that I have here. So if I want to switch back to magic, I'll just hit 4. It's control 4, and then it will give me my original keybind setup. So that is going to be different for each player. It's going to be different based on what buttons you're comfortable with hitting and what combat styles you're using. But one thing that I recommend stay the same are your defensive abilities. Now, your defensive abilities are always going to be on screen, always going to be in your combat bar. If you see here, I have a whole section dedicated to just defensive abilities. Definitely recommend you put them somewhere in this direction with a keybind that's easy to hit. If you guys pause the video and just check out the keybind setup that I have, you'll see that it's all pretty close together, even though there's a lot of different things that I can do. So always keep your defense abilities there. Any support abilities, any like Demon Slayer, Dragon Slayer, Undead Slayer, keep them somewhere where they're easy to hit. You don't necessarily need to have a ring or teleports on there. You can definitely just use that because you're not going to be teleporting during boss fights or PvP engagements. Or PVM engagements, rather. We all know PvP is dead. But this structure is what I recommend to be a standard foundation for how you progress through PVM and the abilities that you incorporate in your combat bar. So defensive abilities, you got your prayers here, you got any supporting abilities here, and I also have my surges and my dive. I also have escape set up, but I hardly ever use it. So if I just wanted to surge, I can just surge on the press of a button. If I wanted to dive, I can just press the wrong button. I can still press the wrong button. There you go. There's a dive. A really late one, but there it is. Turn that off. So everything I have set up here is made so I can look at it quickly and look back on screen and know that I can use it without wasting time. So I think I pretty much covered everything there. If you're a new player or if you're an older player that really don't use these functions, I highly recommend that you try it out because this will improve your PVMing. I guess, you know what? There's actually one more thing I want to cover, which is the difference between Revolution and Manual. Now, they both have their benefits. Manual giving you control to do whatever you want without accidentally using ability, and then Revolution being a more laid-back form of combat that allows you not to worry about all the abilities and still do damage at a moderate pace. However, if you are someone who's trying to get up in PVM, someone who's, trying to improve, I highly recommend that you just disable Revolution and learn how to do it manually. Yes, it's going to be hard. Yes, it's not fun. When I was learning how to do full manual, it was not easy. But the benefit outweighs the effort put in. Manual is good if you're learning. However, there are going to be certain situations where if you're using manual, or if you're using Revolution, and the boss is about to do a kill mechanic on you, and for some reason your guy's just auto-attacking at the same time that you need to be doing like resonance or devotion, you're not going to be able to get off devotion or resonance because your guy is just auto-attacking based on what you have on your revolution bar. And it's annoying. So that's why I chose to have manual. And definitely recommend that if you're trying to learn how to PvM, you put in the extra effort to learn manual. When it comes to more complex bosses, having access or complete control of all your abilities is just going to benefit you in the long run.